Hey everybody, I'm Whitney Tilson, and I got a lot on my mind. And so, for the first time in my life, I'm just going to sit down and record a video. Want to share some thoughts with my friends, my readers, but most importantly, the people at Samaritan's Purse, the Christian evangelical organization that 4 days ago came and built an emergency field hospital directly across the street from my apartment building, right there in Central Park. And I've been volunteering there since the very first day, basically all day, every day, 12 hours a day. Since then, I've been getting a lot of questions, been having incredible experience. But most importantly, I want to thank all the people there. And as I've been going around shoveling and hauling mulch and nailing down tar paper and setting up barriers and putting up tents, and just hauling materials, all the things I've been doing. I've really been a sort of a jack of all trades. Everyone's been thanking me, but I'm like, no, I want to thank you. This is my hometown. This is literally my backyard. And all of you have come here from all over the country. Nobody's paying you to help us, me and my fellow New Yorkers, during our hour of deep, deep need. And I'm sorry, it's very emotional for me, but we're in serious need right now. Nearly 1% of New York City's population has gotten infected. A lot more probably, but these are just the ones we've tested that we know. Almost 1,000 people have died. I've got friends in the emergency rooms who tell me it's like the third world there. They're just overwhelmed. They don't even have basic PPE like masks, much less proper personal protective equipment. And so we're really in need right now. Lives are on the line, and we did not prepare appropriately for this. And now we're in big, big trouble. And a lot more people are going to die unless people really step up. And so this organization that I'd never heard of before, Samaritan's Purse, dropped everything. They just set up a hospital in Italy, which has been hardest hit in the world, and came here. I saw what they were doing when I was just out walking my dog on Sunday morning with my wife. And out in the field right across the street, we saw some blue tarps down, a couple trucks there, a couple police cars stopping traffic, whatever. And didn't really think anything of it, had no idea what it was. Then 6 hours later in the afternoon, was out there walking my dog. And lo and behold, there were a bunch of tents already up. And I couldn't believe that what had already happened just in the 6 hours. And somebody said, oh, yeah, that's a group setting up. That's an emergency field hospital. And I just assumed it was Mount Sinai, the hospital right across the street. It was just setting up an overflow there. But no, I later learned it was this group called Samaritan's Purse. And again, didn't think much of it. Didn't think there was anything for me to do. But, I'm sort of been looking for things to do because it's been very frustrating sitting here at what is now ground zero of the most serious pandemic in certainly the last century. And not being able to do anything, just sit here cooped up in my apartment. So when my friend Alistair DuPont emailed me and said, hey, Whitney, I heard about volunteer opportunities here through my Christian men's group that I'm a part of. You want to come on over and help out? I said, sure. And so went on over Sunday afternoon, and there was a whole group of us. There must have been 50 volunteers. And at that point, we were still putting up tents. So we were hauling, these big plastic, heavy jigsaw puzzle pieces almost that make the floor of these tents. And then once we did that and locked them all in together, we framed out the tent, or some of them are sort of inflatable. And then we put the canvas over it. And then there was a huge job staking it all down and so forth. So that was what I did basically Sunday night. Monday morning, got up, went over, and sure enough, there were a bunch of volunteers there. And at that point, I'd emailed a bunch of my friends. So Tony and Aaron and Nick and a bunch of my friends came on over. And we made ourselves busy for 13 hours. There was no shortage of things to do. Setting up a lot of tents, hauling those big metal police barriers and setting up a perimeter around the property. And then we sort of thought we were done. And then a huge truck came and dumped a mound of mulch, 6 feet high. It was probably literally a ton of mulch. And we realized, they told us what we got to do is lay out pathways through here because it's been raining, the grass and the field was getting all muddy, and you can't have all the people there, slipping and sliding and getting muddy and tracking mud into the tents. So basically, for another day and a half, 2 more dump trucks came. Ended up being 3 full trucks, 3 tons of mulch, and there were dozens of volunteers that were laying that mulch out, laying out walkways, basically. And I'm sort of proud of myself, made myself super useful because we only had a few shovels. And since I lived right across the street, and I know the doormen, the handyman in our building, they've got snow shovels, which are perfect for shoveling mulch. So I hustled over to my building, and the doorman and the handyman took me down to the basement and gave me 4 big shovels, which is great. And then I noticed there were sleds down there in the basement as well. And these were the plastic sleds that my daughters had used when they were kids. And literally right where the hospital is located now is where my daughters were sledding down the hill. I'd take them out every weekend in the winter. So that's almost like it's a very personal spot for me where this hospital is. And so there were dozens of sleds, probably 2 dozen sleds down in the basement. And I realized those sleds would be much better than shovels and wheelbarrows for carrying mulch around. So I grabbed 2 dozen of them, Alistair and I, and brought them back. And so every volunteer either had round saucers, and then we actually figured out that the longer sleds held a lot more mulch. You could stack 2 of them on top of each other. And then instead of carrying it, you could pull it using the little rope handle that I used to pull my girls up the hill sitting in the sled. Was perfect for pulling mulch. So the combination of the sled discovery plus a whole lot of volunteers, we moved those stacks of mulch and set up those walkways like you wouldn't believe. So after that, some of the walkways in the critical care areas where they're bringing patients in on stretchers, they can't be rolling through even mulch, certainly not the mud and the grass. So at that point, we were laying down plywood and putting tar paper over it. So I spent hours nailing, you name it. This morning, it was cold. And so they have these big gas-powered heaters blowing through big flexible pipes, like in the back of a dryer. And so we were wheeling around these huge, heavy heaters, hooking up those flexible pipes into each tent, then to the heater, using drills and drilling it all together so it wouldn't come out, running extension cords and thermostats. I'd never done this before, but that's what I was doing this morning. So I could go on, but just keeping myself super busy. And then the last thing I did just this afternoon, an hour ago, was I noticed, I was arranging my friend Charles at Lexington Pizza Parlor, read one of my emails on Sunday and said, can I send over food for all these people? And so he sent over 15 pizzas on Monday for lunch. He sent over a huge pasta, meatballs, salad, cannolis for lunch yesterday. He brought pizza again today. So thank you, Charles, and be sure to order in. You can't go sit there, of course, but you can he's definitely open for business, and support your local restaurants like Lexington Pizza Parlor. So, but what I noticed is after lunch, I was there working until 6 or 8 p.m. and sometimes dinner doesn't come, and people were hungry, people were thirsty, and they had water bottles, and that's it. There was nothing. So this afternoon, my 17-year-old daughter, Catherine, and I sent her to the garage to pick up the car. We drove up to Costco, and I dropped almost $2,000 buying hundreds and hundreds of Cokes, Diet Cokes, Starbucks Frappuccinos, Gatorade, every beverage you can imagine, and every snack you could imagine, sweet snacks, salty snacks, all in individual containers, right? Not big bulk containers like Costco often sells for coronavirus purposes. We don't want to be spreading the coronavirus through our snacks. And Catherine was a hero, driving the car, backing it in, and we have a good sized car, a Volvo XC60, and we had 4 completely full shopping carts, huge shopping carts at Costco, from the lower level into the cart piled high. That's how much stuff we bought, 4 of them, which filled every inch of the car. Catherine and I driving from Costco over to the hospital, literally I had boxes of Pringles in my lap because there wasn't 1 square inch of space in our car. So, the people there, all the nurses and doctors, they got to eat. They get hungry. They get thirsty and tired. So they need Gatorade and salty snacks and protein bars and stuff like that. So was delighted to do that. And everybody was thanking me. But again, don't thank me. It's the absolute least I can do to thank you for coming here to our city from all over the country to help us during our hour of need. Now, let me address the question, sort of the elephant in the room that I've been getting from a lot of my friends, which is, this is Samaritan's Purse is a Christian evangelical organization founded by Franklin Graham, son of Billy Graham. And you know what those folks think about LGBTQ community and about abortion, and a lot of issues that, frankly, I feel strongly about and strongly disagree with them about. And but on top of that, that's well known, right? And Franklin Graham has said some things that I find abhorrent about my gay and lesbian friends and family, many very close to me. But you know what? So how do I rationalize being over there helping and supporting this organization that he founded? And the answer is during this crisis, during our time of need, when they're coming here, I'm going to set my ideology aside. I'm not going to have arguments with them over those beliefs. We can do that later. I probably will do that later with some of these people who are now, I consider my brothers and sisters. Sorry. It is very emotional to me because, look, I'm not a religious person, but they are here doing God's work. And what motivates them is not proselytizing and this other nonsense I'm hearing is because they believe that God is telling them to go heal people and help people in distress and save lives. And that's what they're doing here. This is not some sham. Like this nonsense I've been seeing on the internet in these articles. I mean, I thought it was right-wing loonies who trafficked in crazy conspiracy theories, but we on the left are just as bad, it turns out. This idea, there's a rumor going around that all of us volunteers, they were requiring us to sign some waiver, their mission statement, anti-gay, anti-abortion stuff. That's just lunacy. Nobody was asking us to signing everything. They put us right to work, right? And there was another even crazier theory out there that they were only going to treat Christian patients. Somehow they're going to turn away patients who weren't Christian, the overflow from the Mount Sinai emergency room. Are you kidding me? Who's dumb enough to believe that they're going to do that? Their mission from God is to heal all people, not just Christians, And then they've got plenty of chaplains over there, and they're going to be doing a lot of praying for the sick and dying people over there. But there's this idea, somehow they're going to be proselytizing, and while they've got people in bed, can't get away, they're going to be preaching to them, trying to convert them. Are you kidding me? That's the craziest nonsense I've ever heard. So just get it out of your mind. Stop being an idiot. Okay? Now, is it good marketing for them and for their religion that they're out here helping us out and doing great work and saving lives? You bet it is. And you know what? When there are crises around the world, Israel always sends doctors and helps out first. And is that good for Israel's image and the Jewish religion, which is the religion I'm most closely affiliated with through my wife and my 3 daughters? You bet it is. And you know what? I wish every religion were doing a lot more of this, of this good, smart marketing, because it's good for the world. It's helping people and saving lives. And look, I'm not a doctor, but I went in there and I've got pictures, and I can tell when people know what they're doing. And these people have been doing this for a long time. They're a well-oiled machine. It's amazing. In 4 days, they put up a world-class critical care facility with 68 critical care beds, with ventilators, with a whole team of nurses and doctors. This is not being staffed by Mount Sinai. This is being staffed by the people at Samaritan's Purse, many of them who are full-time and who do this, go around the world full-time. Here in the United States, when there are floods and hurricanes, anytime people are in need, that's where they want to go, and they do it internationally as well. And so, you know what? If they want to do that and they're doing that, I will support that 100%. And I will set aside, at least for now, during a crisis, my ideological differences with them. So, we're here in the wealthiest census tract in the United States, the Upper East Side of New York. And I and my fellow Upper East Siders, by and large, lead lives of privilege and comfort. And boy, our world has been turned upside down in the past month. You know, I've been lucky. I don't know anyone who's in the emergency room right now. I know people who've gotten the virus, but you know, it hasn't been too bad for them. It hasn't been life-threatening yet. But one of my closest friends, right across the park, in a building, in a big apartment building full of rich people just like mine, a 53-year-old guy who had no pre-existing conditions, just died yesterday. And I'm 53 years old. Like, this is very real. It's very personal. You know, their internal podcast at Samaritan's Purse, they interviewed me and they said, what do you have to say to our listeners? How should they pray? Who should they pray for and all? And I said, you know, I wasn't raised particularly religious, so I don't do a lot of praying, but right now, I want everybody to pray for us. But I said, you got to do more than pray. Yeah, you got to treat the coronavirus seriously, because this thing is really bad. It's really serious, and we're going to beat it. And I think we're going to beat it and get it under control sooner than most people think. I think nationally, we're in New York. I'm looking at the data every day. That's my full-time job as an investment newsletter publisher. I'm giving investment advice to people. And I actually think stocks are a buy because I'm an optimist. And I think I see the light at the end of the tunnel in the data. But the hospitalizations and the deaths are a lagging indicator. That's still going to get worse, even if we've got the spread of the infection under control. And not, when I say under control, I just mean not going up exponentially. It's gonna take a while before we really get it down to low levels, and all. So you know, it's been a very strange experience here because I've spent the last month almost at 30,000 feet way up here, studying the data, looking at the trends, and trying to give good investment advice to my tens of thousands of subscribers and readers, you know, many of whom are watching this video right now. And like I said, I think we're going to get through this sooner than most people think, and that'll be good for stocks. But there's still we still got a dark tunnel. Even though I see the light at the end of the tunnel, I think I see the beginning of the end. I don't see the end yet, but I see the beginning of the end, right? But that's not because I dismissed this virus like I foolishly did initially. And oh, it's just a little bit worse than the flu or something like that. No, it's not because I'm not optimistic because I take this coronavirus lightly. It's the opposite. It's because I think finally we Americans are taking it seriously, and we're doing the social distancing we need, and we're doing the short-term shutdown. Because the thing is this virus doesn't last very long. It tends to, you know, people get sick, and then almost all of them get better, but the few who need hospitalizing, et cetera, it all happens within a matter of a couple of weeks. So if everybody who has the disease right now, we don't know who those people are yet because there's not widespread testing. But if so what's happening is people who don't have symptoms are out there not doing good social distancing, and they're passing it along, and that's what keeps the virus going, right? So my message to everybody listening here is look, we don't got to shut down for a year. We just got to take this seriously for a couple of weeks, and that'll stop the transmission. Our infection rate, what's called our R0, our reinfection rate, drops below 1.0. That's the key metric. And then that's what happened in China. That's what happened in South Korea. That's what happened in Singapore and Hong Kong when they took it seriously. They were prepared because they dealt with SARS and MERS and whatever. Right? So we were caught napping, and shame on us. This is one of the great failures of American history, to not have gotten on top of this before things got crazy and before the emergency rooms across the street from me were overflowing and people dying needlessly, and we're setting up emergency field hospitals like they usually do, you know, in Iraq and Liberia with Ebola, right? We're doing it here on the Upper East Side of New York because we didn't take this seriously. So take it seriously. do the social distancing you need to do. And I think if we all pull together, and I think we will, and we are doing it right now. I think when we look back, in fact, a year from now, and we look at the actual infection rate, I actually think the infection rate right now in New York City and probably all of America has plateaued, which is, of course, the first step toward declining, right? So the good news here is, and I sort of want to leave you with an optimistic note, is the good news here is that we know how to beat the coronavirus because a bunch of other countries have already done it, okay? The question, though, is can we rise as collectively, can our leadership and our government do what's necessary? But most importantly, can all 331 million Americans do what is necessary? And by the way, that doesn't mean, I got a friend in Wyoming, and people aren't on subways. This is a disease that spreads rapidly, when there are a lot of people together in big cities like Wuhan, China, and some of the big cities in northern Italy, and right here in New York City, right? So, we here in New York, we got to do more. And I'm not saying, take it, be cavalier about it. But people who work outdoors out in Wyoming can probably continue to go work outdoors, keeping their distance from other people, right? But in New York, we got to do a lot more because it's a lot more serious here, and it's apparently a lot riper environment for the spread of this disease. And we've got a much higher critical mass of people out there spreading it, right? So I sort of have mixed feelings about this sort of universal complete shutdown of America. I think actually what we're doing now, which is much stronger shutdowns in the states and particularly the urban areas where this disease has got a foothold, there we got to really take strong measures, right? But every American's got to do at least a minimum, right? No group gatherings. I've been hearing stories about coronavirus parties and those idiots down on spring break down in Florida saying, oh, I don't care if I get it. Well, a young person isn't going to die from this. That's pretty clear. But the problem is you get it. You don't know you have it, maybe because you're young and healthy. But you're carrying, and then you interact with somebody who's older, whose immune system is suppressed for some reason, who's sick. Almost all the people who are dying from this are the elderly and or have one or more pre-existing conditions. But they were in all likelihood infected by a young and healthy person who was asymptomatic, right? So that's why everyone has to take this seriously. So that's my optimistic note I'm going to leave it on, which is I believe that Americans collectively are doing what is necessary right now, and that we just can't yet see it in the data because all the data is lagging indicators. We're not testing enough people, but those positive test cases we're seeing every day are people who got infected a week or two ago before we were taking it as seriously, right? And then the people who are being hospitalized, again, they got infected maybe a month ago, and the people who are dying maybe got infected a month to a month and a half ago, right? So what's, I'm optimistic in that, but I can't prove it, and that's the tough part. Which is if we had national widespread testing right away, I could prove it, but that data isn't there. So I've just got a hunch that we're now doing enough to get the reinfection rate of this disease down, and within a week or two, it'll start showing up in the data, a reduction or at least a plateauing of new cases, a plateauing of hospitalizations, eventually a plateauing of deaths. And then in all of those, again, on a sort of a lag basis, declining. And then we can start, very carefully going back to work, reopening, restarting our economy, and starting to get back to normal. But that's a process that's going to take some time because until the scientists of the world come up with treatments and most importantly, a vaccine, that we can absolutely knock this out and then completely put it behind us. And you know what? I'll just and today, there are just a lot of gloom and doomers out there. You open up your email, you open up your web browser, you turn on the TV, and it's just all gloom and doom. And one of my friends, I think correctly, called it coronavirus porn. In the media business, if it bleeds, it leads. So one of my pieces of advice is I try and tune out all of that. and I try and focus on the data. And I try and remember that, we Americans, sometimes we're slow to awaken, like a slumbering giant, right? But when we finally do awaken and we finally do get serious, there is absolutely no stopping us. So the reason I'm optimistic about the coronavirus, but also the reason I'm optimistic about my stock portfolio, and I'm telling my subscribers, don't go all in, don't use leverage, don't speculate, don't day trade, but just put money into blue chip companies, carefully selected companies, like Berkshire Hathaway, one of the safest, my favorite company for the last 30 years, or just buy an S&P 500 index fund. And as long as you've got a long-term horizon, I have no short-term view. The headlines are going to be terrible for another week or two, for sure, because keep in mind, hospitalizations and deaths are a lagging indicator, right, by a couple weeks in the case of deaths. So, fasten your seatbelt for a lot of bad headlines, try and tune them out, and just have confidence that the United States is the strongest, wealthiest country in the history of the world. And, we've been a very divided people now, and sometimes to the point of despairing. But you know what? I think if a guy like me, who has almost nothing in common with the folks at Samaritan's Purse across the street, like I struggle to think of a single evangelical Christian I knew 4 days ago, right? And they probably didn't know a bunch of, Upper East Side wealthy, Volvo driving, latte sipping, wealthy liberals like me, right? Prior to 4 days ago. But you know what? Out there, let me tell you, we are brothers in arms. These people are good people. They believe they're doing God's work. And I have witnessed with my own eyes 12 hours a day the last 4 days that they are doing God's work. And I'm going to embrace them. I'm going to support them. And let's hope that I can send them on their way. We can all thank them and send them on their way soon, because they're going to stay here until we've got this virus under control. And I want that to happen soon so that I can hopefully at that point give them a big hug, which I can't do now. All I can do right now is record a video and thank you from the bottom of my heart. I know I speak for every New Yorker. Thank you, thank you, thank you.